There's nothing you'll find in any McDonnell Douglas publications or the FAA-approved manuals that will address the loss of all hydraulics in a DC-10. Why? Because the DC-10, like all airplanes, are designed to a factor of 10 to the minus ninth. That problems such as this will not happen to a factor of 1 in a billion. There was no procedure for this, and therefore the outcome as we could perceive it was not good. A flight attendant is not a pilot, and I said, would you go back to the cockpit, tell the captain there's a DC-10 training check airman back here. If there's anything that I can do to assist, I'd be happy to do so. And when she came out of the cockpit, she came around the corner, saw me standing there, and she stopped dead in her tracks and just went. I opened the door. The scene to me as a pilot is unbelievable. Both the pilots were in short sleeve shirts, the tendons being raised in their forearm, their knuckles were white. They had turned the control yoke, the yoke we use as a wheel, all the way against the stops. We're asking the airplane's left wing to go down, and the right wing keeps falling. We want the nose to go down, we push forward. They are pushing for all they're worth, and the first officer was slouching in his seat, and he has his knee on it to exert more pressure, trying to force it down. But the airplane continues to climb. And I looked at the second officer's panel. All the hydraulic gauges indicated 0 quantity and 0 pressure. And the captain said, go back and see if anything's moving. If there's any of these flight controls were responding to their inputs. If you remember as a kid, you know, you had your hand outside the window of a car that was driving down the road at say 40 miles an hour. But if you raised your hand, ailerons, elevators, which are in the tail to control the pitch, and rudders, which control the yaw, those act in the same way as your hand did in a car. If I ask for the left aileron to go up, the right aileron goes down. They'll never both be up. They just aren't built that way. This way or that way. It's yin and it's yang. Just back of the second door, there's a spot in the coach cabin where you can have a look out a window right down the length of each wing. And I looked out the wing and they're both floating up. Impossible if you're pressurized with hydraulics. It can't happen. Scary proposition.
We have no hydraulic fluid, which means we have no elevator control, almost none, and very little aileron control. I have serious doubts about making the airport. Have you got someplace near there that we might be able to ditch? Unless we get control of this airplane, we're going to put it down wherever it happens to be.
United 232 Heavy, roger. Stand by 1. And United 232 Heavy, did you get the souls on board count?
Nearby. Hey, right now, we don't even have time to let go to call the gal. United 232 souls on board, United 232.
United 232, say again?
292.
Roger, thank you.
This airplane had this inherent tendency to want to roll on its back to the right, it seemed. And the only way that Al could have any control of it was he'd reach up and he grabbed the throttle, the gas pedal for the left engine under the left wing, and he pulled it back to idle. And he'd take the one for the right engine, the wing that was falling, and he'd push it to its maximum power. And that power setting slowly but surely would bring that right wing back up again. You had to pull it, modulate it to try to keep the wings level. Terribly hard thing to do. If you were driving your car with power steering, the engine stalled, where you've tried to steer it to a stop. If you can imagine that force and take it up a factor of 4, that's what it took to move these controls between the two of them. Tremendous physical exertion. I wasn't doing anything. I said, Captain, would you like me to work your throttles for you? And I stood between the two pilots, leaning forward, and I began to operate the throttles. That left the captain only with the yoke to fight. I was in a foreign country. This is places nobody had been before. We didn't know what it was going to take. We just had to learn as we went. So basically what we did is we started with a box this big, trying to make it this big so we could land. These three men were not known to me. They were all Seattle-based, and I'm out of Chicago. At the time, I think we had 7,500 pilots on the airline, so we didn't know each other by name, face, or reputation. The only thing that was controlling his aircraft, in fact, was his throttles, although I don't think it was quite clear to him at that time that that's the only thing that was controlling. He transferred to a perfect stranger the control of his aircraft. Now that is an amazing thing if you will take into consideration that pilots don't give up control very easily. As I stood there beginning to operate the throttles, he reached over his right shoulder with his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Al Haynes." And he introduced himself to me in this incredible environment we were in. And I gratefully reached forward and I shook his hand and I said, "Hi, I'm Denny Fitch."
First officer is struggling with the yoke?
Correct.
What good is that doing?
You ask any pilot, no matter what he's flown with, it's been fighters, light airplanes, or what has always saved the day for you when all else has gone to pot? What it always comes down to is your stick and your rudder skills. This is how we get up, this is how we get down, and we've done it thousands and thousands of times. This is what we fall back on. This always works, except today it's not working. The second issue is, how do we know it's not working? How do we know it's not giving you something? Maybe it's giving you this much, but it's contributory. In other words, it's positive toward the outcome. How do you know? You can't afford to leave it ignored. So he is working this area. He's covering that base. We're working as three people on the same mission. You let go of it if you're the pilot. The first rule of any event we have in air is somebody fly the aircraft, keeping the wings level under control while whatever problems we're having are dealt with. Somebody fly the airplane. But how do you fly an airplane without controls? If you were sitting in a chair at altitude and watch us fly by, we would look like a sine wave. 1 minute we were climbing, then the next minute we were descending, then the next minute we were climbing, then we were descending. What's known in aerodynamic terms as a phugoid. And the phugoid was going up and down 2,500 feet per minute on average. Every time we went through one of these up and downs, we had a net loss of altitude and we were getting closer and closer to the ground. When we fly an airplane, we try to maintain perfect balance. Smooth air, you can take your hands off and the airplane goes right where you want it to go. The wings are level, you don't climb, you don't descend. Everything is perfect, it's in harmony. In this case, engine number 2 is out of the equation. So we've lost basically a third of the thrust capability of this aircraft. We can do nothing more because the controls don't work anymore. They're gone. The airplane says, "I want back what I had before. How can I get it?" Okay, if we go down, we will build airspeed and we will get back to that harmonic situation I liked. So the nose falls and the airplane starts down, 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 looking for that speed. Speed builds up. The only problem is the process overshoots. Now it's doing 290. It says, wait a minute, that's too fast. How can I get back to 270? Oh, I gotta go back up. That'll bleed the speed back. So then we start up the hill. But it does it too much. And now we get down around 220. Oh, too slow. Let's go back down and get that speed again. The airplane was in harmony at 270 knots. It wants to go back to 270 knots. And in the effort to get it, it overshoots continuously, going too fast going down, too slow going up, and it sets in place this phugoid, this sine wave action, getting lower and lower after every occasion.
Every cycle
brought us lower, yes. We had up and down at 2,500 feet per minute. We had these great variations in airspeed, and the airplane was continually turning to the right. Now, this is not the methodology you want to come in for a landing. We're trying to get this wing level and keep it there. And how can we stop this up and down at the same time? It's a twofold problem. I don't want to get any closer to the Earth. We need to buy time to figure this thing out. We need to buy time to find out what this airplane can do. Because, quite frankly, in the previous 25 years to this event, there never has been a survivable loss of flight controls accident. Nobody's ever survived. If you're sitting at the gate at an airport, you can see an airplane that has engines under the wing. Maybe the wind is causing them to rotate around. Well, those blades you're watching at the very front of the engine are what's known as the fan stage. It's got a 300-pound titanium disc in the middle that's holding onto 36 fan blades. It's rotating up around 16,500 RPM. Metallurgical failure, that piece flies out. In a quarter of a second, all the blades, this mass inertia, exits through the side of the engine and out the side of the tail of the aircraft, throwing shrapnel everywhere. Those high-velocity parts impact upon the tail surface of the aircraft. They puncture through at great force. Beneath that surface, which you can't see, are hydraulic lines of very strong stainless steel tubing. Shrapnel basically sever all the lines. All the hydraulic fluid goes overboard, so we've lost all the hydraulic systems in a quarter of a second.
They're redundant hydraulic systems?
Correct. There's 3 systems. Say the elevator, one of the panels that move up and down in the back of the thing. 1 and 2 is on this piece. There's a separate elevator that's powered by 3 and 2. There's 1 and 2 here, 2 and 3 here. Okay? If I lose system 1, I still have number 2 powering this system, and I have 2 and 3 powering this one. If I lose 2, 2 goes away, but number 3 is now working out here. So I've always got something. On the face of it, good Lord, I mean, that's amazing. Triple redundancy, you're pushing the envelope, right? To expect anything worse than that to happen. Well, you know, there's Murphy's Law.
Are there any cables?
No cables. If you look at the flight control surfaces of these airplanes, they're big as barn doors. They're huge. You have to use hydraulic advantage to operate these massive flight controls, both in weight and to fight the air forces that are against them. Well, if I can't have manual, then what do? Well, how am I going to replace the manual back up? Well, you put more hydraulic systems in there with redundancy. It's triple redundant. It's, you know, that's good enough, you know.